Hello, and welcome to the dungeon. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Wizard finally. So, it's our final class, unless they release Monk at some point, in the UA for Playtest 5, for One D&D, or whatever it's going to be called. And we have finally made our way to Wizard. Now, as you would expect, Wizard doesn't get a ton of changes, but that's because Wizard was generally considered to be one of the strongest, if not the strongest class, in the entire game. But there are some changes, and so let's take a look at them. We've got a bunch of new features. We have some changes to things like prepared spells and whatnot. And of course we've got, well, that's not changed. We've got the usual full spellcaster progression that we would expect. Anyways, let's take a look at their Wizard updates and design note here. It's their brief summary. Spellcasting now allows you to use your spellbook as a spellcasting focus. Not a big deal, but this is something I think should have always been the case anyways. It just makes logical sense. Wizard Spellbook is a new first level feature which consolidates the spellbook rules into one place. In addition, this feature gives you a wizard only spell, Scribe spell. Right, fair enough. Academic is a new second level feature. Arcane Recovery is moved from first to second level. A little unfortunate, but whatever. Memorize Spell is a new 5th level feature. Modify Spell is a new 7th level feature. And Create Spell is a new 9th level feature. Spell Mastery is moved from 18th to 15th level. And Signature Spells is moved from 20th to 18th. And of course we've got Epic Boon, which of course is in line with everybody else. Increases an ability score and gives you Epic Boon feat. So, Wizard. We still have the D6 hit points, of course, per Wizard level. Our proficiencies are mostly unchanged, but we do get all simple weapons now, whereas before we had even worse than that for Wizard. We had like a small subset of simple weapons. So, it's just a little more straightforward, which I appreciate. Multiclassing rules remain the same. We need 13 intelligence to move into or out of Wizard. Spell slots. There are some change. Oh, not to spell slots, sorry, but to our spell casting, which we'll talk about in a second here, for how many spells we're allowed to know, etc. So, before we used to have, of course, you had prepared spells versus, spells known. Now they've tried to basically standardize it, but as it turns out, it's kind of both, since we have a known spells section and we have, our own spells just for that. So, I don't know, it kind of feels like it's trying to do it both ways. Anyways, Wizards do have some changes to prepared spells. It used to also scale with our intelligence bonus, and that has been removed. I find this kind of interesting too, because Arcane Recovery, getting it at second level, isn't that big of a deal, but it does suck a little going from first to second. And then also having less spells available at low levels. Again, this is something that doesn't really hurt us at higher levels, but Wizards are already really good at higher levels. It's kind of the first 2, 3, 4 levels where Wizards kind of suck a little. Not suck, that's not the right word, that's too dramatic. But, are a little behind the curve, I guess. And like I said, Wizard players don't complain because we all know that at higher levels we're just going to be, basically demigods, right? But it is a little rough in those early levels when all you're doing is casting sleep once or twice per long rest, And hopefully not having to use shield too many times, because that interferes with how often you can cast sleep. But whatever. So, our prepared spells increases with the Wizard table, which we already touched on briefly. We've got our prepared spells there, and now it's just a hard set number. Like I said, it does not scale with intelligence bonuses at all. In one way, this is better for newer players, I think, since a lot of new players seem to have a harder time knowing how many Wizard spells they were allowed to have, at any given time. So there is that, but for more experienced players, it's like, I just have less spells. Like I said, that doesn't really hurt you at high levels much, but it does hurt at low levels. Anyways, so changing your prepared spells, you can do it with the long rest. spellcasting ability is still intelligence, and you can use your arcane focus or your spellbook as a spellcasting focus. So, wizard spellbook. I mean, granted, this is something we kind of always had, but now it's a first level feature because, like I said, they wanted to combine and sort of condense everything into just one neat place where it would just all be together. So, your wizardly apprenticeship culminated in the creation of a unique magical book, your spellbook. It is a tiny object that weighs 3 pounds and contains 100 pages, each of which can hold a spell. This magic book holds the wizardly spells you know and is a repository for your arcane findings. Writing in a magical cipher using the spell Scribe spell, you have ensured that no one else can read the book without magic, which is kind of nice. The book is vital to your spellcasting feature, as explained there. So, known spells. The spellbook contains the spells you know at first level and higher. It starts with the following spells and Scribe spell and 6 other first level spells of your choice. So technically you've got an extra spell, but that's because we didn't need to use a Scribe spell before, so technically it's one more, but for any functional, practical purpose, it's basically the same as what we had. Now, they will give you a list of spells, but of course you can choose other ones if you want, assuming they're at the appropriate level. On your adventures, you might find other spells you can add to your spellbook using Scribe spell. So whenever the wizard gains a wizard level after first, you add 2 arcane spells of your choice to your spellbook without needing to cast Scribe spell. Each of these spells must be for a level for which you have the spell slots as shown on the wizard table. The spells are the culmination of arcane research you do regularly. Some other wizard features also add spells to your spellbook. So ritual spell casting, of course, we still have, but these days everyone seems to have, practically. I mean, sorcerers can even get it now. So that is one thing that wizards used to have that was, differentiated them from, say, sorcerer or warlock, unless the warlock, of course, took a specific invocation. So ritual caster. You can cast any spell as a ritual if that spell has a ritual tag and the spell is in your spellbook. You don't need to have the spell prepared, but you must read from the book to cast the spell in this way. Creating a spellbook, you can have more than one spellbook. Blah, blah, blah. Book's appearance, your spellbook is a unique compilation of spells with its own decorative flourishes and margin notes. It might be plain, functional, and just kind of describes how it looks. I will point out that it does not say here that you don't use a spell slot when casting the ritual spell. I hadn't noticed that until just right now when I was first reviewing it. I don't remember if that's changed for all of them in One D&D, but that was one thing that was kind of unique to wizards, is that they didn't use a spell slot to cast their ritual spells. So I could be wrong on this, but I think that has changed as well, which should not be for the better. Yeah, more bad news. Like I said, I hadn't noticed that before, so who knows? I could be wrong. I could just be misremembering, but I'm sure somebody will let me know in the comment section. Anyways, second level, academic. Your time as a scholar has equipped you to recall a broad range of lore. When you take the study action, you can have advantage on any intelligence check you make as part of that action. So, I don't mind this. These days, study is an action for pretty much everybody, and there's not a lot of intelligence checks usually being required. And a lot of times, if they are, they're like investigation type roles where you don't need to be like really on the clock in order to make that check. So a lot of times, doing it in action doesn't matter, but having advantage is quite nice. Like I said, there's not necessarily a lot of intelligence checks, but when you do have to make them, it's nice to be able to actually make them successfully. Arcane recovery. So you've learned to regain some of your magical energy by studying your spellbook. When you finish a short rest, you can choose expanded spell slots to recover. The spell slots can have a combined level that is equal to or less than half of your wizard level rounded up, and none of the slots can be 6th level or higher. So pretty much unchanged there. So example, for your 4th level wizard, you can cover 2 levels worth of spells. You can cover either a 2nd level spell slot or 2 first. You can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So like I said, mostly unchanged except for the fact that it went from 1st level to 2nd. Third level, subclass. And again, we used to get a subclass at level 2. Now it's level 3 because they're trying to standardize everything, which, on the one hand, I get it makes it easier to balance things, and it prevents some of the weird multi-classing combinations that people used to come up with where, certain classes needed 1 or 2 levels, others required 3, and so, this seems to be an attempt to try to make things more uniform, but it does make things, just less interesting in my opinion. I like more variety, not less. But anyways, they give us the Evoker subclass. We'll look at that afterwards. Level 4, we get a feat just like everybody else. Level 5, we're getting Memorize Spell. We'll take a look at that. Actually, let's just take a look at it right now. Memorize Spell. Total spell, Divination, Ritual Wizard. Casting time of 1 minute. Duration is instantaneous. You choose one spell from your spell book that you don't have prepared, and you choose another spell you do have prepared. The unprepared spell replaces the prepared spell on your list of prepared spells. This replacement will last until you cast Memorize Spell again or finish a long rest. And there is some upcasting as well. When you cast a spell using the spell slot at 4th level or higher, you can replace an additional prepared spell with an unprepared spell for each spell slot above 3rd level. So that is quite nice, actually, allowing us to switch more than one spell if we so desire. Anyways, not bad. Does give us some flexibility there. The fact that it's a ritual as well is, pretty nice. Anyways, level 6, we're getting a subclass feature. Level 7, we're getting Modify Spell. In our magical research, we've unlocked the secrets of Modify Spell and add that to our spellbook. So, Modify Spell is very interesting. This is one that's going to be probably abused like crazy. Again, it's a 1 minute casting time, and it's a ritual, and it's unique to Wizard. So, using arcane formulas in the spellbook, you magically alter one arcane spell that you have prepared. You can change the spell's color, sound, and smell, and you can make one of the following modifications to the spell. You can remove, components. Remove one of the spell's components, either verbal, somatic, or material. You can't remove the material component if it's a spell that consumes that component. So kind of like subtle spell casting from Sorcerer, but you have to have it set up in advance. It's spell specific. You have to, you can't just do it on the fly and remove components from any of them. And it's only one of the spell's components. Still kind of nice though. Concentration. The spell requires concentration. Damage can't break your concentration on the spell. This is a big one. A lot of the best spells in the game require concentration. Most wizard or actually any casters usually take like feats and stuff just to try to make sure they don't lose concentration on invaluable spells like Warcaster or whatever else, right? Resilient Constitution, being able to remove the concentration component of a lot of your spells is huge. So, or not remove the concentration, but remove the requirement for concentration checks due to damage, because that is the most common way to lose concentration. Anyways, damage type. The spell is a damage type. Replace it with one of the following types, and then they list a bunch of different types. The spell has multiple damage types. You can change only one of them. So this is basically like the Sorcerer Meta Magic as well, the Transmute spell, where you can change the damage type from one to another. I still think it's not quite as good because, again, this requires me to know in advance what I might want to change it to. Now, I'm not saying that, having Lightning Ball instead of Fireball is a bad idea at any, that's probably going to be a pretty safe bet, right? But it is nice on a Sorcerer if you can realize, oh, this thing's probably immune or resistant to fire. Maybe we'll try cold, or maybe we'll try this, maybe we'll try that. And you might even be able to hit vulnerability types, where it's a lot more likely when you can do it on the fly and see what the creature is, as opposed to having to have it set up in advance with no idea what you're going to be fighting. Anyways, range. The spell has a range of at least 5 feet and doesn't have a range of self. Increase its range by a number of feet equal to 30 times your wizard level. So, that could be fairly significant. Especially if you're, fairly high level. Even middle level. Being level 10 and adding an extra 300 feet of range is nothing to sneeze at. Anyways, ritual. If the spell lacks the ritual tag and has a casting time of at least 10 minutes, give it the ritual tag. Not bad. Targets. If the spell target or affects one or more creatures and doesn't have a range itself, it now affects only your allies or enemies. Choose which one you cast modify spell. This is quite nice as well. I mean, things like hypnotic pattern with friendly fire, fireball, of course, anything like that which could be hitting your allies, changing out the targets, suddenly makes that spell even better than it already was. And let's be honest, hypnotic pattern and fireball, those are both pretty good spells to begin with. The chosen alteration lasts until you cast modify spell again or finish a long rest. This altered version of the spell can't be added to a spell book or spell scroll without first casting create spell. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 5th level or higher, you can choose an additional spell modification for each spell slot above 4th. Now this is a big difference from the sorcerer, who usually can't use more than one meta magic on any given spell. There are a few noted exceptions, but for the most part, you can't. And even then, you're only looking at a maximum of 2. I mean, technically, if you wanted to use a high enough spell slot, you could change basically everything about a spell. You could change the range, the targets, the damage type, concentration, components, I could get pretty sick. Anyways, so that is modify spell. I like this feature quite a bit. I think that creative players can really take advantage of this. I have seen some people suggest that combining with create spell allows you to essentially break spell casting rules in some ways by creating your own unique spell from modify spell, scribing to your spell book, and then making more and more changes to that spell over time, and then just scribing more and more versions of it. That's something you could do with enough downtime. But that's okay. I think things like that are creative and fun, and frankly, if players are going to abuse that kind of stuff, they're going to abuse these kind of things anyways, right? Like, we all are aware of things like Simulacrum and how that was heavily abusable in 5th edition. If players want to do that, it's pretty hard to stop them, and hopefully they just don't. I know my players are kind of like, yeah, that's cheesy, we don't want to do it, and I appreciate that. They want to have a challenge too. They don't want to have infinite copies of the party's wizard doing everything, while everybody else just sits there and watch. That's not fun for anyone. Anyways, I'm getting distracted. Level 8, we get a feat, just like everybody else. Level 9, we get create spell, which we'll talk about in just a second here. So, of course, the spell can be cast immediately after modify spell, and is followed by scribe spell. If you complete that trio of spells, you can create a spell of your own. So, create spell. 5th level transmutation spell. Casting time reaction in response to yourself casting modify spell. So it does consume at least 1,000 gold pieces per spell level of the spell altered by modify spell. So in some campaigns that could be a major deterrence, but in others maybe not so much. And especially once you get to a higher level, you could easily have tens of thousands of gold, so not really such a big deal. Anyways, synthesizing your arcane knowledge and power, you strive to create a new spell. To succeed, you must concentrate for 1 hour and meditate on a spell you just altered with modify spell. Otherwise, the spell fails. If you succeed, you must start casting a scribe spell within the next 10 minutes and add the altered spell to your spell book. Once the spell is in your spell book, it becomes one of your known spells. It gains the wizard source tag rather than the arcane tag, and it gains the name of your choice. So I do like that you can like name your own spells, because let's face it, like you got Tensor's floating disc, and one kind has faithful hounds and mansions and a million other things named after him. Who wouldn't want to have their own spells, right? Rory's telepathic bond, It's just kind of a tradition for wizards to make their own spells and then just name them after them, which I kind of like. So I'm glad that this kind of gives you a chance to do those kind of things. I think that is a very interesting mechanic. I don't think it's too bad as written. It might need some I don't know. It might need a few touch-ups just to make sure that people don't really just abuse the spell like crazy. But overall, I actually think it's not too bad. I've seen people go on and on about how this is gonna break the game, but like I said, the game is already breakable if that's your goal. Hopefully it's not your goal. Hopefully your goal is to have fun. And this kind of stuff is fun, so I like it. Anyways, level 10, subclass feature, of course. Level 11, nothing, but you do get 6 level spells, I'll point out. Level 12, we get a feat choice just like everybody else. Level 13, we get Force Cage. No, I'm just kidding. We get nothing, but we do get 7th level spells, one of which will probably be Force Cage. Level 14, we get a subclass feature. Level 15, the Spell Mastery. You achieve such mastery over certain spells, you can cast them at will. Choose a first and a second level spell that are in your spellbook. You can cast those at their lowest level without expending a spell slot when you have them prepared. If you want to cast either spell at a higher level, you must expend a spell slot as normal. By spending 8 hours in study, you can exchange one or both the spells you choose for different spells at the same level. So mostly remains unchanged, although it's been moved up to an earlier level, which is good, and you can swap them out, which is also quite nice. I pretty much always choose Shield as my first level spell of choice, but to each their own. Level 16, we get a feat. Level 17, nothing, but of course we get 9th level spells, so obviously we get Wish. I mean, you might choose something else, but you're probably choosing Wish. Level 18, signature spells. So it used to be a level 20 ability, but now we get it at level 18, so super early. It'll happen in 95% of all campaigns, of course. You gain mastery over 2 powerful spells and cast them with a little effort. Choose 2 third level spells in your spellbook as your signature spells. You always have these spells prepared, and you can cast each of them once at 3rd level without expending a spell slot. When you do so, you can't do so again until you finish a short rest or a long rest. If you want to cast either spell at a higher level, you must expend a spell slot as normal. I will just point out that I almost always take counter spell as one of mine, but we'll see what happens with One D&D. Hopefully the need for counterspell to be omnipresent will lessen, because it looks like it's probably not going to exist, at least not in its current state. 19th level, feat. You gain an ability score improvement feat or another feat of your choice for which you qualify. Level 20, we're getting our epic boons. We get intelligence increased by 2, the maximum is now 30, and we get the epic boon of dimensional travel or another epic boon feature of our choice. So that is the wizard. As for the evokers specifically, so obviously we're going to get our subclass at level 3 now instead of 2. Again, not a big deal, but as I mentioned earlier, wizards are a little on the weak side in those first couple levels, and I kind of liked getting a subclass at 2, so whatever. Anyways, Evoker, formerly the School of Evocation, has a new name convention for wizard subclasses, which is to name the type of wizard rather than the type or school of magic. Whatever, no problem there. Evocation Savant now adds 2 evocation spells to the spellbook, which is very nice as well. And Potent Cantrip also now works with cantrip attack rolls, not just saving throws. Very nice change there. So, 3rd level, Evocation Savant. Choose 2 evocation spells from the arcane spell list, each of which must be no higher than 2nd level. You add those spells to your spellbook without needing to cast Scribe Spell. In addition, whenever you cast Scribe Spell to add a spell to your spellbook, the gold cost and the casting time you must spend to add an evocation spell to your spellbook is halved. For the most part, the Savant abilities have all just been ribbon abilities. So I'm glad to see that we are getting at least a little something useful, even if it's, I imagine every time it's just going to be choose 2, necromancy spells, choose 2 transmuter spells, or whatever, right? Transmutation spells. But, that's fine. It just means that I don't have to use my spell slots on, Scorching Ray or whatever else, right? I can just take that now with my Evocation Savant, and I can use those spell slots I can use those selections to choose other spells. It does give me more variety, right? Anyways, 3rd level, Sculpt Spells. You can create pockets of relative safety within effects of your evocations. When you cast an evocation spell that affects other creatures you can see, you can choose a number of them equal to 1 plus the spell's level. The chosen creatures automatically succeed on their saving throws against the spell, and they take no damage if they would normally take half damage on a successful save. Now, this is pretty nice with things like Fireball, for example, and it does mean that things like our Modify spell aren't quite as necessary with our direct damage spells, right? We could, now you can use that on whatever else you wanted, right? Hypnotic Pattern. That was the example I used last time, so we'll stick with it. So why not? But yeah, now you don't have to use it on Fireball, which does save you some time and money. Excuse me. Power sneeze there. I think I ruptured something and I might be bleeding internally, but we'll press on anyways. Level 6, Potent Cantrip. Damaging cantrips affect even creatures that avoid the brunt of the effect. When you cast a cantrip at a creature and you miss with the attack roll, or the creature succeeds on a saving throw against the cantrip, the target takes half the cantrip's damage, if any, but suffers no additional effect from the cantrip. This is pretty nice. I mean, cantrips do kind of start to suck after a while, but at level 6, your let's say Firebolt, as an example, is just scaled up at 5, so it's doing 2d10 damage. It's spammable. You're not using spell slots. If maybe you're in a deep dungeon run, you haven't had a lot of time to stop and rest and recover spells, so you're trying to either low on spell slots, or you're just worried that it might become a problem. You're trying to conserve them. You're spamming out some cantrips. Or you just like to, take a lot of concentration spells. So you're concentrating on one thing, and now you're just like, okay, I'm concentrating on my main spell. Now I'm just going to fire out some direct damage spells, right? Missing with your cantrip and doing half damage is a lot better than missing with it and doing none. So, whatever, I'll take it. Is it the most powerful ability ever? No. But, like I said, it's not bad. I've definitely seen worse. Level 10, Empowered Evocation. Whenever you cast an evocation spell from the Arcane Spell list, so note Arcane Spell list, not the Wizard Spell list. In other words, your modified spells do not count. Would have been nice to see an exemption for that, maybe. But anyways, whenever you cast an evocation spell from the Arcane Spell list, you can add your intelligence modifier to 1 damage roll of that spell. So, if you hit somebody with, say, a Fireball, and you have a +5 intelligence mod, you can add +5 to 1 of the die that you rolled on a Fireball. Whatever, again, that's more damage. Nothing wrong with it. Not the most exciting feature in the game by any means, but if you went with the evocation school, it's probably because you wanted to blast things, and being able to blast harder is better than not blasting harder in that case. Anyways, level 14, Overchannel. You can increase the power of your spells when you cast an arcane or a wizard spell of 1st through 5th level that deals damage. You can deal maximum damage with that spell. Now, notice that it says arcane or wizard there. So this is clearly not a mistake on the level 10 ability where they specify arcane but don't add wizard. Because here they're adding wizard, making sure that you can use it with your modified spells, right? So it's a 1st to 5th level spell that deals damage. You can deal maximum damage with that spell. First time you do so, you suffer no adverse effect. If you use this feature again before you finish a long rest, you take 2d12 necrotic damage for each level of spell immediately after you cast it. Each time you use a feature again before finishing a long rest, necrotic damage per spell level increases by 1d12. This damage ignores resistance and immunity. Now notice it's not just 2d12 necrotic damage. It's 2d12 for each level of the spell. So if you're using this on a 5th level spell, that's 10d12 necrotic damage. I mean, that's a hefty amount of damage. Needless to say, I look how they have, each time you use this feature again, before finishing a long rest, the necrotic damage per spell level increases by 1d12. It's like, how often do you think I'm going to live after the first time to be able to do this like multiple times a day? At least maybe I'll survive the damage because the cleric heals me, but after a couple times, he's going to be the one who kills me because he's going to be sick and tired of using all the spell slots, healing this stupid wizard who insists on dealing more necrotic damage to himself than he does to the enemy. Anyways, that is the wizard. Overall, I think that it is nice to see some of these spells that we got on the tab here, like the create spell, memorize spell, and of course the modify spell. This and create, the combination of those two, allowing you to kind of customize and make your own unique spells, is one that I really, really like. I think that it really does help to make the wizard still feel kind of interesting and unique, because one thing that I am concerned about, especially after seeing the sorcerer, is that a lot of the differences that used to be between them, and a lot of the advantages that wizards used to have in their own ways, seem to have disappeared and kind of slipped away. And I'm not saying that wizard should be better than a sorcerer either, or anything like that, right? I'm just saying that before, wizards had a better spell list and a few other things here and there that were kind of better overall, but sorcerers had meta magic, which really helped to close that gap a lot. And you kind of had this interesting dynamic. One of my subscribers has talked about this a bunch, that he feels like wizard is like the it's like the Swiss Army knife, essentially, where you just got tools for everything. So sorcerer really is a lot more limited, but is very specialized with the things they can do because of the meta magics, right? If you want to cast a control spell, but you can hide it and give people a disadvantage on the saving throws, or whatever else you want to do, right? And you can get those spells back by trading your sorcery points for spell slots and whatnot. So sorcerers is kind of like, yeah, you don't have as many tools in your toolbox overall, and the tools you do have tend to be slightly inferior, but not a lot. But you were better at using those ones, whereas the wizard was more just like, no, I've got the giant toolbox with pretty much every tool. I am a little worried that the wizard and the sorcerer are sounding a lot more similar these days than different, because the sorcerer now has access to the entire arcane spell list, and frankly that was one of the biggest differences, right, is the wizards had a better spell list. A lot of the modify spell abilities really seem to be treading into the meta magic territory, which again just kind of makes another one of the differences between the two a little smaller. Yeah, I think meta magic is still better, but again, it's just, I don't know, it feels like the classes are kind of being more homogenized, and I get that from a balancing standpoint that is a desirable thing, but from a playing standpoint, I don't want everything to just be different flavors of the same thing. You know what I mean? I don't want 37 flavors of ice cream, but every class just has ice cream. I'd rather have 6 flavors of ice cream, but then have 37 different other types of food to choose from as well, and have different subclasses, meaning the flavors of each of those types of food as well. You know what I mean? Hopefully that analogy makes sense. I don't know. Either way, I do kind of worry overall that we are moving towards this more and more generic game system where things are, there's less variety and less difference and whatnot. But anyways, I haven't tried anything from One D&D yet, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. And, this is all UA. It's all subject to change and player feedback. And they've been having polls and whatnot. And overall, I've actually thought that Wizards of the Coast have done a pretty good job on this. And considering Wizards of the Coast have not done a good job on anything in years, this is kind of surprising to me. That they seem to have actually done a good job of listening to a lot of player feedback on One D&D. So, that's their only win lately. However, speaking of Wizards not having a lot of wins lately, I'm probably going to start doing some reviews of some other game systems, because lately my players and I, for probably the last 6 months or so, have been experimenting with a lot of different games. And usually we'll make characters, try a game for a couple months, play, 6, 8, 15 sessions, somewhere around there, kind of have a mini campaign, wrap it up, and then just move on to another game system. And our idea has just been to try some different things, see what we think. But like one game session usually isn't enough to know if you're really, really going to like the system. I mean, sometimes it can be enough time to know you're not going to like a system. I've had that happen before. But to know if you're really going to like it or not, it usually requires more than just one night of play. So I'm probably going to start talking about some of these game systems. We've played the Witcher tabletop role-playing game. We are currently playing the Star Wars tabletop role-playing game. We are also currently playing Endless Realms, which is not a very well-known system. I think it's basically, online, order the books through Amazon or through their website only kind of thing. A couple of my players found it because they were at like a convention once, and the guys who were selling it had a booth, and they just talked to the guys and thought it looked cool, and we started playing it and quite liked it. So I'll talk about that at some point here soon coming up. We've only played Conan one night, so I want to go back to Conan. And we've recently made characters for Cyberpunk, but we haven't begun playing that. That is probably going to be the replacement for Endless Realms, which is going to be wrapping up right away. But we have started playing Star Wars, and we've already completed our Witcher campaign. So I'll have some videos probably talking about each of those, and we'll just look through the books. I'll talk about things I like or don't like, or where I think the strengths of each system are. Also, we've got Dragon Age, the Dragon Age role-playing game based on the Dragon Age Origins and, all of its subsequent sequels. So I think that could be good. We haven't tried it yet either, though. So as we start playing more of these games, I will talk about more of them and, do videos on them. But we've got a couple already that, like I said, I feel fairly confident that I can do videos about. Most of The Witcher and Endless Realms. But as we play more Star Wars, I will let you know what I think of Star Wars as well. And frankly, I'm kind of excited about playing a lot of these other games as well. This is a good spot for it too. I feel like 5th edition is kind of winding down. One D&D hasn't come out yet. A lot of us, myself included, are rather embittered by Wizards of the Coast and all their shenanigans lately. So, I figure, why not? Let's talk about some other game systems and see, the channel will remain primarily D&D because that's what I most, primarily do, right, is D&D. And I think it's a lot easier to have a core audience if you're really talking about one game session or one game system instead of trying to cover 15 different game systems. That kind of has to be its own channel. If it's just going to be a channel about tons of different games, like here's 15 games that aren't D&D. I think that kind of stuff is fine, right? So this is not going to be the main focus of my channel. But I do feel like this is a good time to cover some of these other things where, like I said, we're kind of in that 5th edition to 5.00001 edition type of, hole here between the two. So anyways, I'll probably start out the next video. We'll probably talk about The Witcher. And after that, we'll probably do Endless Realms. Anyways, that is the plan so far. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me through this series. I realize that this series isn't as popular as a lot of my others, and I understand why, right? We're looking at a game system that isn't even available yet, and it's, it's not even official. Lots of stuff could change yet. But I did want to cover it and talk about it, because it is something interesting and new, and, gives me a source of a bunch of new videos. And none of which is bad, right? But anyways, I'm glad that we're finally wrapping up with the One D&D, because I think I'll be a lot more interested in when it's actually completed out and it's something that everybody starts to play, right? Right now, it's still just UA stuff, and any of it or all of it could change. Wizards of the Coast can't even seem to agree on what the name of the thing is going to be yet. They keep changing that every 5 minutes. So, we'll see where it goes. Anyways, that's everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with me through the series, etc., etc., etc. Feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and most importantly, leave me your comments in the comment section. I look forward to reading them, even the negative ones flaming me for not remembering whether or not ritual spellcasting now uses a spell slot or not. I should have looked that up before I did my video, but whatever. I'm lazy. I didn't. What can I say? Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.